Discover the amazing transformation I inspired. After my daughter-in-law excluded me from Christmas, Maggie sat at her kitchen table, staring at the half-finished batch of Christmas cookies lying before her. Flour dust floated gently in the air, but her heart felt like a heavy stone. Just days ago, her son David had shattered her expectations. "Mom, Sarah doesn't want you at Christmas this year," he had said softly, unavoidable sadness clouding his eyes. The news echoed in her mind like a funeral march. How had things come to this? She had always believed that family was bound by love, nurtured by shared experiences. A simple dinner, a laughter-filled holiday gathering. Yes, she might have played a traditional role. The nurturing mother, the warm hugger, the one who made meals with love. Yet, wasn't that enough? With every tick of the clock, doubt settled deeper into her bones. She had poured herself into her family for decades, every hug a thread weaving them tightly together. Or so she thought. Rejection clung to her like a winter chill, and she felt exposed. What if Sarah saw her as just a relic of the past? What if she had become irrelevant, lost beneath layers of family chaos? Maggie yearned to reach out, to fight for her place. Yet an instinctive urge to protect her heart whispered in her ear. What if it hurt even more? Battling her own desires left her restless. In the midst of this emotional whirlwind, a flicker of determination burned within her. Perhaps it was time to reclaim what she had set aside for so long. She picked up a sketchbook, dusting it off like a prized possession rediscovered. With each line she drew, she felt herself transforming, pouring anguish onto the page. The colors spoke of resilience and strength, producing canvases alive with unspoken stories. Art had been a childhood dream, forsaken for the practicality of motherhood, but now it breathed life back into her weary soul. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Her artwork soon caught the eye of the local gallery, and as her pieces lined the walls, Maggie felt a resurgence of confidence that she hadn't experienced in years. Each compliment echoed in her heart, creating ripples of self-worth that battled her lingering rejection. Yet amidst her triumph, tension thickened in her family. David, caught in a familial tug-of-war, neither wanted to hurt his mother nor offend his wife, wrestled with a heavy shame. Maggie sensed it. She felt his internal struggle like a weight pressing down on her own heart. One chilly evening, she knew a reckoning was inevitable. Inviting Sarah over to discuss her artwork was only a thin veil over the storm swirling just beneath the surface. As they stood together, surrounded by vibrant reflections of her journey, Maggie felt a rush of emotions. Determination now mingled with fear. Throat tight, voice shaking, she confronted Sarah. The air crackled with tension, a clash of contrasting perspectives on what family truly meant. In that moment, as anger and vulnerability collided, Maggie felt the barrel of anguish chambered, ready to be unleashed. Would Sarah recognize her worth? Would they come to terms with the fractures that lay hidden behind smiles? Maggie's heart raced as she braced for an uncertain future. Maggie stood in her studio, shrouded by the scent of paint and the glow of soft, afternoon light filtering through the window. The vibrant canvases around her reminded her of the breakthrough she'd experienced. Each brushstroke a statement of her reclaiming identity, each color a celebration of resilience. Yet a nagging voice in her head whispered doubts, questioning whether this newfound creativity could bridge the emotional divide with Sarah. The confrontation lingered in her mind like an unfinished symphony. They had exchanged initial words, sharp, like the edges of her palettes. It had been a clumsy dance of defensiveness and vulnerability. Sarah had looked at her art, her eyes swimming between admiration and something more complex, something like fear of being overshadowed or feeling inadequate in the shadow of Maggie's talent. In that moment, Maggie recognized a reflection of herself in her daughter-in-law. Someone striving for acceptance. Determined not to repeat the emotional patterns of the past, Maggie decided to awaken the dormant aspects of her being, not just as an artist, but as a mother-in-law and an integral part of her family. She opened her sketchbook, filling the pages with images that represented her dreams for reconciliation. Her family gathered around a dinner table, laughter echoing through the air, warmth knit into the fabric of their lives. As she painted these dreams, she felt empowerment in mapping out her vision, shaping her intentions into tangible forms. That night, she contacted David. They needed to talk openly without hesitation, to peel away the layers of unspoken tension. The following evening they met in a quaint cafe, a stark contrast to the layered complexities of their family dynamic. Over steaming cups of coffee, Maggie leaned into the conversation, digging deep. "David, I want to understand. It hurts that Sarah doesn't want me around, but I also need to know how you feel about all of this," she asked, voicing her vulnerability. The honesty cracked through David's exterior, a wall of responsibility built to protect both his mother's and wife's feelings. Tears welled in his eyes, and Maggie's heart twisted. He was caught in the crossfire of family loyalty. "I don't want to choose. I love you both, but I see Sarah struggling. I want you to connect, to see the beauty of what this family can be," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. Maggie nodded softly, realizing that if she wanted to reclaim her place, genuine conversation was her bridge. Inviting Sarah to the studio, to witness not just an artist's creations but the heart that pumped life into every piece, could open the door for deeper understanding. That night, Maggie meticulously prepared her studio. The light shine framed the canvases, each telling a story of her journey. She set up an easel, leaving space for Sarah's thoughts and feelings, hoping to entice her into sharing her own emotions and dreams. The following day, Sarah arrived hesitantly, examining the room with cautious curiosity. As she stepped inside, Maggie felt both fear and excitement. What was Sarah's emotional landscape? Would there be room for openness, or would the chasm of misunderstanding grow larger? "Come, look," Maggie encouraged gently, guiding her toward a piece that depicted intertwined trees, branches reaching toward one another, but separated by a wide river below. "This is how I see us," she began, voice steady despite the tremor in her heart. "We can grow together, but we need to find a way to meet in the middle." In that moment, as Maggie revealed her inner thoughts through her art, she sensed a shift in Sarah, a glimmer of connection amidst uncertainty. Would Sarah step toward her, choosing vulnerability over pride? Maggie's breath hitched. This was her moment not just to create art, but to craft a new family narrative. What would Sarah say? The tension was palpable, thickening the air with anticipation. As silence lingered, Maggie felt the stakes rise, realizing that this conversation could lead to healing or deeper divides. The silence stretched between them, a bridge mostly unbuilt, but holding the weight of unspoken fears and expectations. Maggie's heart raced, an erratic drum echoing in her ears while she studied Sarah's face. Would the young woman echo her sentiment or merely recoil? Finally, Sarah broke the quiet, taking a deep breath that filled the room with the essence of her anxiety. You see us as trees?" she asked, her voice trembling, vulnerability breaking through her armor. There was surprise in Sarah's tone, but within it lay a hint of curiosity. Maggie leaned in, sensing a flicker of hope. "Yes. Look how we are rooted so differently. We're not alone. Each of us nests within a larger family structure. Yet we can still stretch our branches to one another. A slow nod from Sarah suggested the words were sinking in but layered with hesitation. Maggie felt a thrill of connection, but she knew it was fragile. Sarah, I want this for us. I don't want you to feel overshadowed. I want to celebrate you too. The quiet hum of the studio enveloped them as Sarah's gaze flitted from the painting to Maggie's open expression. Celebration feels more like a thing of the past, she whispered. Maggie sensed the immense weight of Sarah's pain and disappointment, a mirror reflecting her own insecurities over the years. She had painted and created to evade her struggles, rather than confront them. Maybe Sarah's reluctance stemmed from the same impulse, shackled by their past miscommunications. I see that now, Maggie confessed, feeling renewal surge through her. We're both trying to navigate through the legacy of family relationships. I want to build something new. With every word, Maggie realized she wasn't just creating artwork. She was forging connections. She wanted to explore the uncharted waters of what it would mean for Sarah to be included as equal, to realize they were both artists in different fields. But she lacked the knowledge of how to balance the dynamics of their relationship without crossing boundaries or competing. Even with the newfound excitement in her chest, she wouldn't falter. This was a critical moment. Perhaps we could create something together, Maggie proposed, brushing aside her lingering doubts. Not just paint, but share ideas, our visions, what it means for you to be part of our family. That sounds nice, Sarah murmured, surprised. The warmth of her tone hinted at an opening as she took a tentative step closer to the easel. Maggie smiled, emboldened by this slight movement forward. What if we each express our version of family? Different mediums, different styles. It could be a monthly exchange. As Sarah pondered, her brow furrowed in contemplation, the atmosphere shifted. The cautious tension began to melt away, making room for budding trust. They were poised on the brink of exploration, an unexplored frontier that urged them both to embrace not just art, but honest dialogue. But just as Maggie felt exhilaration, drawing confidence from the connection they were building, a shadow of doubt flickered behind Sarah's eyes. But what if it doesn't work? What if I'm not good enough? A wave of recognition washed over Maggie. Those words were echoes of her own fears, remnants of an artist's doubt. I faced that fear too, Sarah. Every time I stand before a blank canvas, I wonder if I can breathe life into it. But it's in the act of creation that we find our strength. Instead of dampening the momentum, Sarah's vulnerability allowed their shared journey to deepen. They both stood on the brink, hearts racing, each poised to reveal their true selves. Yet fear lingered stubbornly, daring them to take that crucial leap. I need to think about it, Sarah finally said, retreating slightly once more, re-establishing the emotional distance between them. Maggie felt the initial thrill dissipate, leaving apprehension in its place. Would the courage they had just discovered transcend merely a moment? Would Sarah build the strength to embrace this exploration? Or was the build-up of emotions destined to linger in potential, never taking the shape of reality? As Sarah slipped out of the studio, Maggie watched her go, the spark of potential now shrouded in uncertainty. She turned to the canvas, where abstract forms reflected their raw truths. The clamor of fear echoed back. Was she ever going to find genuine connection within her family again? Tomorrow would demand courage, for it was not just about creating art, but forming bonds that transcended fear. Maggie's heart raced as she leaned against her easel, knowing the time was coming to confront the underlying splits of their family's narrative head-on. Would Sarah be willing to join her in crafting a new story? Or would the distance remain? The question hung in the air like suspended paint on a brush, dripping, ready to fall. The morning light filtered into the studio, illuminating the swathes of color that danced across the canvas. Maggie stood before her work, a spectrum of emotions swirling within her. The soft, muted tones she typically favored felt stale today. She needed vibrant, striking colors to mirror the tumult inside her, but the vision remained elusive. As she mixed paint on her palette, each stroke brought a release of tension. The colors began to sing, creating a raw expression of vulnerability entwined with hope. It was a ritual she had relied on, but today felt different. She wasn't just painting for herself. She was channeling the very essence of her relationship with Sarah. Would her art echo the fracture or the bridge? Maggie found herself lost in thought, grappling with the weight of her desires. Her aspirations to connect with Sarah were like a fragile thread, a spark glowing against the uncertainty. "What if I fail?" she whispered to herself, brushing her fingers along the canvas. It was a question that haunted her. Fear had always been the insistence of her inner critic, taunting her failures and isolating her in self-doubt. But she realized something important. Sarah was already on that precipice with her. Taking a deep breath, Maggie faced the canvas, her hands steady. She had to remember that art was a language she and Sarah could share, a tool to break down walls. Inspired, she abandoned the timid tones and splashed bold purples and golds across the surface. Bursts of creativity enveloped her in warmth as she imagined Sarah's accompanying interpretations. Would her approach resonate, or simply clash? She envisioned an exchange where Sarah might feel seen, where her voice could flourish. Yet an unsettling thought nagged at the back of her mind. Would Sarah truly embrace this journey, or would the child of her past fears emerge, canceling the newfound hope? The question scattered her focus, and frustration clawed at her throat. How could she expect anyone to anchor themselves amid uncertainties without first mastering her own instabilities? Overwhelmed, she stepped back from the easel, heart racing. The outside world called to her. A neighbor's laughter echoed from the street, reminding her of simpler joys. Maggie felt an urge to break the isolation. Perhaps she could connect with others who battled similar vulnerabilities. Managing her internal battles was crucial, but so was reaching out. Wasn't that what she was trying to teach Sarah? With newfound determination, she grabbed her phone and opened her social media app, scrolling through her contacts until she landed on a group of former art classmates. They had shared not just techniques in painting, but raw, uninhibited conversations about their lives. Fingers trembling, she crafted a message. "I'm looking to collaborate on a project. Exploring art as a means to dialogue. Any interest?" As she hit send, adrenaline surged through her veins, each pulse unsettling and exhilarating. What if they responded positively? What if they brought their own stories to the table? Perhaps the exchange would spark new insights that could flow into her process with Sarah. But fear swooped in, threatening to cloud her resolve. What if their collaboration highlighted the gulf between her attempts and her shortcomings? What if she wasn't ready for the vulnerability required to connect deeply? Maggie shook her head, resolute in the belief that without risk, there would be no reward. She resumed her position at the easel, letting the colors merge and collide, allowing herself to embrace the uncertainty of her own emotions. This was the essence of existence, wasn't it? Strength stemming from courage, intertwined with the chance to ignite meaningful dialogue. In the back of her mind, a plan began to form. A structured timeline where she could invite Sarah into this broader conversation about art and family during each stage of the project. She would reach out again, this time not just to Sarah but to herself as well, to embrace the fact that she was a part of a larger narrative, one that spanned beyond her individual fears. Her heart raced again, but this time it was infused with excitement, propelling her forward into the unknown. As paint slid down the canvas, blending into an imperfect yet beautiful mess, Maggie realized the first step was already happening. The trajectory of her life was shifting. A new chapter unfolding where she wished to include Sarah wholeheartedly. But as the paint dripped into an uncertain pattern, Another question began to rise in her mind. Would Sarah take a willing step toward collaboration? Or was this just wishful thinking? Would their tentative threads of connection bridge the distance before the opportunity slipped away? The canvas waited, the colors vibrant yet unresolved, as did the future of their relationship, pregnant with potential but overshadowed by fear. Would they be able to paint a new story together? Maggie returned to her easel, guided by a newfound determination. Each brushstroke felt like an act of reclamation, not just of her art, but of her emotional landscape. The fear of exposing her vulnerabilities to Sarah battled with the need to express herself fully. Would her daughter be receptive, or would her efforts be swallowed by doubt and silence? The whir of the city outside her studio provided a counterpoint to her internal chaos. Laughter from children, the hum of conversations between neighbors, and distant music floated in, acting as a reminder of life unfolding beyond her own insulated struggle. This was what she craved, not isolation but connection. Yet with every pulse of creativity, the question of Sarah loomed large. Art can connect us, Maggie thought, recalling her childhood experiences in art classes that encouraged openness and exploration. But could she harness that same principle now? Drawing in a sharp breath, she envisioned arranging a small gathering with her old friends. Not just as collaborators, but as knowledge-bearers who had walked through their own labyrinths of self-doubt. She took a moment to assess her palette, vibrant hues intertwining like threads of various narratives waiting to be woven together. There was something liberating in the chaos, a symbolic dance reflecting her desire for connection. Not just with Sarah, but with others who shared similar battles. What if they could support each other in discovering fresh perspectives? In a moment of clarity, she decided to organize a creative jam within her studio, inviting her classmates to contribute their experiences alongside her artwork. A public display of vulnerability might not only stimulate her artistic voice, but could help in reaching out to Sarah as well. It was no longer just about her internal conflicts. It involved sharing the journey, absorbing inspiration from each participant, and allowing new ideas to emerge. Taking her phone back in hand, Maggie crafted another message. What do you think about a creative jam? Everyone brings their own experiences and we create together? I want to show how our stories can intersect through art. As she sent it, relief coursed through her. The act felt monumental, an expansion beyond her fearful self, and a step towards forging connections. Days passed, and though responses came slowly, Maggie felt a shift within. The anticipation was like the beginning tremors of an earthquake. When the messages finally trickled in, warm invitations to collaborate filled her screen. Excitement flared within her. She was rediscovering not only her artistry, but also the power of community. Yet, despite this blossoming enthusiasm, doubt reared its stubborn head again, forceful and resentful. Was this truly a progressive step, or just another distraction? What if she opened herself to their interpretations and no real connection formed between herself and Sarah? Rubbing her temples in frustration, she paced the small studio. The urge to center her plans around Sarah intensified, yet she hesitated. It wasn't just about making art together. It was about confronting the raw truths of their relationship. Would I be courageous enough to confront our distance head-on? She asked herself. Perhaps this gathering could be the catalyst for a larger confrontation about their dynamic. Diving deeper into the complexity of motherhood, of loss, of seeking connection amidst chaos, was daunting. Would Sarah accept the invitation to come along for this exploration, or would she retreat further into silence? Maggie stepped back to the canvas, letting her brush dance with abandon. Each stroke was imbued with hope, and yet encumbered by uncertainty. Purpose and vulnerability collided on the surface, each color vibrantly alive with her inner questions. She felt the weight of the blank spaces on the canvas. Was she brave enough to fill those spaces with the raw truth of her fears and desires? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Painting had never felt so charged with potential. She was crafting not just an image, but the possibility of reconciliation. With her heart surging, she looked toward the door, imagining Sarah standing there, ready to enter this transformative space. As she set the brush down, she caught a glimpse of the reflection in the window. The sunlight caught the colors on her canvas, giving each hue a life of its own. It called her back to reality. The question lingered yet unsolved. Would Sarah be willing to step into this world she was creating? Or would their paths diverge at the threshold? Maggie's breath caught. A suspenseful moment poised on the edge of possibility as she moved towards the phone to bridge the gap. Would she dare to confront the silence, or let it linger unspoken? The path ahead had grown clearer, yet just as fraught with uncertainty. Maggie sat on the floor of her studio, surrounded by scattered papers and half-finished canvases, each one a thread of her journey that was yet to be woven into a coherent tapestry. The messages from her friends still buzzed in her mind. Invitation after invitation that promised connection, but also posed the risk of exposure. She felt as though she were teetering on the edge of a high dive, staring down into uncertain waters. With a sudden surge of determination, she rose to her feet and adjusted the lighting in her studio. The soft golden glow offered a warm embrace, rather than a harsh spotlight. This was her space, a sanctuary where exploration and vulnerability could coexist. She poured herself a cup of herbal tea, the steam spiraling up towards the ceiling as she contemplated her next steps. The mundane routine reflected the importance of nurturing both her spirit and her craft. Art was her language, her bridge to the other side. If she wanted Sarah to step through, she needed to speak that language fluently. That idea thrummed in her mind as she considered how the creative jam could serve as more than just an artistic gathering. It could be a revelation, a chance for her to redefine not only her relationship with Sarah, but also her own identity as a mother. Maggie realized that she was terrified, but also exhilarated. It signified growth on multiple levels. As the date of the jam approached, anxiety twisted in her gut. Each brushstroke felt increasingly heavy, laden with the weight of expectations, not just her own, but those she suspected others projected onto her. What if the gathering ended in silence? What if they all stood around awkwardly, trapped in an unspoken narrative of their own insecurities? Just the thought of failure felt like a chokehold. To combat this spiral of doubt, she took her sketchbook to the cafe down the street, the familiar scent of coffee mingling with the sounds of laughter providing a comforting backdrop. As she sketched, her hand moved swiftly, almost instinctively. Shapes began to emerge, raw and unedited, capturing the essence of her conflicting emotions. With each crumpled page that fell to the floor, she released a bit more of her fear, the act transforming her anxiety into something tangible. A piece she considered with particular intensity took shape. 2 figures, positioned back to back, surrounded by an atmosphere thick with tension and unspoken words. Capturing those nuances felt like a revelation in itself. The realization that their relationship, like her art, was not a straightforward narrative. It had depth. It had dimension. Returning home, she hung the sketches on the wall as a reminder. Each piece captured a conversation she hadn't yet had, a confrontation that had been brewing beneath the surface. They were no longer just images. They were potential pathways leading toward understanding, albeit fraught with challenges. With the creative jam just a day away, anticipation and fear danced a delicate waltz within her. What if this venture, meant to bridge gaps, widened the chasm instead? What if Sarah didn't show up? Would she still consider this process meaningful? Each question gnawed at her, simmering with urgency. That night, as sleep eluded her, Maggie stared into the darkness, mulling over her own motivations. Was she kindling a gathering to heal, or simply to justify her own desire for connection? The inquiry dug deeper, embodying not just her relationship with Sarah but her larger struggle with maternal identity and self-worth. Determined to hold space for her vulnerability, she whispered to the silence in her room, "I'm ready. I'm here." As the sun peeked through her window the next morning, casting hopeful rays across her floor, Maggie felt an unexpected sense of calm wash over her. She was ready to face the confrontation she'd been dreading, the openness she had been avoiding. Glancing at her phone, she thumbed a message to Sarah. "I'm hosting a gathering tomorrow. I'd love for you to come. It's for us, as much as for the art." Her heart raced as she hit send, each bead of discomfort replaced by something softer. Possibility. But would Sarah respond? Maggie's fingers hovered over the phone screen, the faint beeping of incoming notifications quieting her racing heart. Each second felt like an eternity, her mind looping over memories and frustrations with Sarah. The familiar sting of rejection surged through her. Had she really captured the shared essence she craved in their strained relationship? She shook her head, trying to clear the fog of uncertainty. Time ticked by, and with every passing moment, doubts clawed at her. Maybe this idea of a gathering was just an illusion, a misguided attempt to stitch together a torn bond. Her previous attempts to connect with Sarah echoed in her mind. Each awkward family dinner, each silent car ride. What if this effort would be just another failure, another canvas destined for the back of her studio? Before she could spiral into despair, Maggie snatched her sketchbook and began to sketch more figures, this time featuring a lone figure surrounded by whimsical flowers. She envisioned how different colors could symbolize emotions and intentions, perhaps even a path towards rekindling her relationship with Sarah. In this moment, art was a reprieve, a refuge of thought where clarity often emerged amidst chaos. Her focus sharpened, pulling her away from the creeping dread. Art had always shown her who she was becoming, not just as a creator, but as a mother striving for connection. Each stroke of the pencil became a manifestation of her intention, an opportunity to redefine the narratives around both her and Sarah. An idea sparked and she put down the pencil, reaching for her phone again. In one swift motion, Maggie drafted a follow-up text. "I'm hoping this is a space for us to explore together. Bring your favorite supplies, or just come as you are." She paused, deliberating over the edge of vulnerability. Would Sarah feel the sincerity emanating through the screen? Would she understand that Maggie was not just reaching for reconciliation, but a deeper connection on multiple levels? The bubbling anticipation transformed into a tangible ache in her chest. There was a fierce desire to have Sarah understand just how much she, Maggie, longed for more than superficial exchanges. She needed her daughter-in-law's eyes to see the candid layers of her heart that had remained closed for too long. With a final hesitant breath, she pressed send. The art project now collided with the reality of her relationships. The cacophony of hopes and threats spiraled in Maggie's mind. Each sketch, each line, was akin to the myriad emotions lodged within her. She envisioned the creative jam as a crucible not only for their relationship, but for reinvention. In the evening, she set to work preparing the studio, art supplies cascading like treasures on the long table. The bright colors and textures sparked joy, an unmistakable thrill taking root in her chest. This was her space, and she wanted to share it, to navigate both creation and conversation within its walls. As she stood back to survey her assembly, the knot of fear twisted tighter. What if Sarah came but remained distant? What if their art didn't serve as the bridge she had envisioned? Maggie needed to confront these fears head-on and believe they were natural parts of growth. With the layers of paint, she could explore, she could distort, or elevate. Just as she challenged her canvas with new techniques, she could do the same with the relationship she prized. But could she truly bear the weight of that challenge, knowing it could lead to heartbreak? As twilight dipped into the studio, Maggie grasped the paintbrush, steadied by the weight it represented, both a tool and a symbol of change. She was on the precipice of something powerful, a chance to tear down walls she had long been afraid of confronting. The real question was not just about what would happen if Sarah didn't show, but what transformations awaited her if she genuinely opened herself up. Moments later, her phone buzzed, the unexpected sound making her leap. She peered down, heart racing, knowing that whatever awaited her could alter the course they had been on, for better or worse. Would it be an opening or another painful chapter? She exhaled slowly, ready to confront whatever the response might hold. Maggie's pulse quickened as she read the notification. The simple message from Sarah read, "I'll be there." It felt like both victory and agony mingled in her chest. Relief washed over her, yet the wave of responsibility crashed just as hard. Sarah was coming, but now the challenge loomed larger than ever. This wasn't just about art. It was about bearing her soul. She took a deep breath, her original sense of excitement beginning to morph into a cocktail of hope and anxiety. With every stroke of paint, she had once felt so liberated, but now the brush felt weighted with expectation. What if Sarah didn't connect with the artwork the way Maggie envisioned? What if their time together ended up as just another failed attempt to bridge the chasm between them? Hours passed like moments as Maggie prepared the studio, her hands moving diligently, but her mind a swirling tempest of uncertainty. Despite the vibrant palette spread before her, the colors blurred and swirled into an indistinct haze as her thoughts churned. What if her art didn't speak to Sarah? What if it failed to resonate and illuminate? She glanced around the studio, soaking in the brilliance of every piece, every splattered canvas. Art had always been her anchor, the vessel through which she navigated turmoil. Yet the night felt different. It held a promise of connection, but also a threat of further disillusion. She recalled the many quiet dinners, each filled with polite exchanges that grazed the surface, but never pierced the core of their relationship. Maggie's fingers brushed over the textured canvas she'd prepared to display. The whimsical flowers were meant to represent hope and rebirth, a reminder that relationships, like art, needed nurturing. She questioned whether she had the strength to cultivate that bond. Already the doubt crept in. Was she emotionally equipped for whatever revelations Sarah might unveil? As evening shadows deepened, she carefully arranged the art supplies meticulously. Brushes, paints, and blank canvases eloquently lined up as if awaiting an orchestral conductor. They were more than items. They were tools of catharsis, anchoring her will to engage bravely. However, the reflection in the studio windows revealed a woman caught between two worlds. "Who am I kidding?" she whispered to herself, the room still except for the soft rustle of her sketches. This isn't just about art. This is about confronting the pain of my own inadequacies, the walls I built around my heart. Each brush of the paint against the canvas transformed her anxiety into visual storytelling. She realized painting meant more than just creating. It was an avenue to raw honesty. Just like she layeried paint, she had to layer her emotions, bringing out stark truths hidden beneath. Maggie paused, her heart accelerating as recollections resurfaced. Moments of vulnerability shared with her mother, colors intertwining their laughter and tears, removed from physical distractions. All that mattered was their feelings intertwining in conversation, buried under layers of unexpressed affection and misunderstanding. Just then, her phone buzzed again, snapping her out of her reverie. It was a message, a photo of a small canvas filled with colors Sarah had chosen to warm up for the gathering. There was minimal text. Ready to create. The thrill of seeing Sarah's readiness ignited a new fervor within her. It wasn't just a simple art project. It was the first step toward rebuilding their relationship. But a golden thread of anxiety was still interwoven in her heart. Would this sharing bring clarity or further confusion? As she considered this question, the door creaked open, the scent of fresh air rushing in as Sarah stepped through the threshold. Bright-eyed and tentative, She surveyed the studio filled with bustling supplies and awaiting canvases. "Wow," Sarah murmured, awe dancing behind her words. Maggie's heart raced at the prospect of the gulf between them slowly being bridged. In that charged silence, recognition flickered in the air, as fragile as the canvas stretched before her. Every moment of vulnerability felt thick with electricity. This was a zone of potential transformation, but also of great risk. The moment hung heavily between them, poised to either lift them into connection or encapsulate them in disconnect. Would tonight unravel the knots binding them, or would vulnerability lead to heartache anew? Her breath caught in her throat, eagerly waiting for Sarah to move forward, to step into the potential they both craved. Would they take the plunge into honesty and creativity? This time she readied herself for the reality of whatever response could follow, knowing both art and relationships dared them to uncover the unsaid. The air hummed with a heavy anticipation as Sarah lingered near the studio's entrance, seemingly lost in the vibrant amalgamation that surrounded her. Maggie felt a flicker of urgency driving her to break the silence, to fill the space with their shared experience. Every moment stretched out like an unpainted canvas, waiting to be transformed. "Thank you for coming," Maggie finally exhorted, her voice wobbly yet sincere. "I know this isn't just about painting tonight. It's about us. Reconnecting." Sarah nodded slowly, placing the small canvas on a nearby table before turning to face Maggie fully. "I've missed this," she replied, her eyes dark pools brimming with emotions. "I've missed you." The simplicity of Sarah's admission sent a bolt of warmth through Maggie, yet apprehension quickly interjected. Was this moment real, or merely a fleeting illusion born of hope? "I've missed us too," she said, carefully controlling her tone to avoid letting the fear overwhelm her enthusiasm. "Let's start by getting our hands dirty," Sarah suggested, an undefined spark of mischievousness in her tone. "What do you have in mind?" Maggie's heart raced at the implications. How might they craft more than just superficial brushstrokes? With a practiced motion, she retrieved the larger canvas prepared with a soft texture. Its surface awaited their exploration. What were they to reveal about each other hidden beneath the paint and layers of interaction? "Flowers," Maggie said, skimming over her previously prepared design. "It's what I did in my last piece. It's a symbol of growth and resilience." She hesitated, then added, "We can layer our emotions on it." Sarah's smile brightened, but it was delicately intertwined with uncertainty. "So we're pouring our hearts into flowers." "Exactly," Maggie affirmed, a ripple of excitement flashing through her. "It'll be cathartic. Let the colors represent our feelings, what we want to say but haven't yet expressed." "All right, where do we start?" Sarah questioned, looking genuinely intrigued. In that moment, Maggie realized she was not merely a facilitator of art. She was a curator of their relationship, each stroke of her brush a potential conduit for deeper dialogue. There was vulnerability in that thought, a heavy reminder of the stakes. They were not just here to paint. They were creating a narrative every bit as complicated as the floral imagery they would conjure. Maggie poured a splash of vibrant yellow onto a palette. "Let's draw the outline, the foundation. I'll start with the stems, the support for the blossoms. You can choose the colors for the petals." Sarah picked a deep coral hue, her brows furrowing slightly as she prepared to join in. The first touch of the brush to canvas felt monumental, a daring leap into uncharted emotional territory. For a fleeting moment, Maggie embraced the trajectory of their collective creativity, where art and emotions met. As the colors began to weave together, the environment shifted. Laughter bubbled forth between them, reminiscent of memories once cherished. It felt natural, the way brushes danced and colors collided. Yet in the depths of Maggie's heart, Self-doubt thrashed, threatening to spoil the vibrant bond they were painting. What if it still doesn't change anything? A whisper echoed in her mind, an insistent challenge to the optimism swelling in her chest. Are you all right? Sarah's voice interrupted her contemplation, concern threading through her words. Maggie hesitated before meeting Sarah's gaze. Did she dare share her true feelings? The fears that mitigated their budding progress? Yeah, I'm fine. Just a lot to unpack here. Sarah's expression softened, colors swirling between them reflecting unspoken challenges. We're both still unsure, aren't we? Maggie sensed a gentle crack in Sarah's armor, mirroring her own worries about what awaited them in the depths of this session. Perhaps the bravery displayed on canvas mirrored the inherent courage required in life and relationships. They could navigate messy paths together. Let's allow this to be a journey, Maggie encouraged, tightening her grip around the brush as she began focusing on the roots emerging from the stems. Whatever happens, we'll just keep layering until it feels right. As their brushes moved, layers of paint, and possibly emotions, began to intertwine in a mesmerizing dance. Maggie started feeling a little less alone, realizing this was a step toward finding her voice once buried in worry and doubt. The artwork transformed into a vibrant metaphor of their shared hope, illuminating their way out of the darkness. Yet, even as colors remixed and shaped the canvas, something deeper nagged at her. Would this exercise expose more than just shared experiences? Would it plunge into issues long buried? Just then, an unexpected knock echoed through the studio. Both women froze, their brushes suspended mid-air. Maggie's heart plummeted. Who could that be? The materials before her suddenly felt trivial compared to the weight of unresolved matters lingering in the air. Are we ready for more revelations? She thought, pulse quickening again. In that moment of uncertainty, she knew they would have to decide how far they were willing to go. Together. Maggie felt a wave of apprehension wash over her as she turned toward the door. The abrupt knock felt like a literal interruption to the momentum they had built together. A moment filled with tentative hope about bridging the gaps in their relationship. Would this new arrival propel them further apart? Or could they find a way to embrace the unfolding narrative of their collective existence? With a quick, resolute movement, Maggie approached the door and opened it to reveal David, her son, standing there with a curious grin, a plate of cookies in his hands. Thought I'd bring some encouragement and snacks for my two favorite artists, he said brightly. Her heart soared as she made room for him in the studio. Perfect timing, she exclaimed, relieved that the warmth of family was walking through the threshold, eager to join this transformative experience. Mom, did you both already start? David asked, glancing at the large canvas speckled with vibrant colors. Just getting into it, actually, Maggie replied, a hint of pride bubbling within her. We're using flowers as a symbol. It's about growth and resilience. As David moved closer to appreciate the piece, Maggie felt the tension ease. His presence created a sense of safety. This was not just an artistic endeavor. It was a family exploration. She could see the sparks of pride ignite in his eyes as he observed Sarah wielding her brush, both of them drawing closer to understanding. Can I join in? He offered, setting the cookies down. I've always wanted to know how to paint. Of course, Sarah said, her voice brightening as she welcomed him into their space. We could use more layers, literally and metaphorically. Maggie watched awash in gratitude, thrilled to see her son taking an interest in their activity. It suddenly dawned on her that this gathering was not simply about her and Sarah. It was about the ways they wove their narratives together, creating threads of connection across generations. As David dipped his brush into a deep blue, Maggie felt a lungful of fresh air fill her being. This bond, so intricately conserved and sometimes so fragile, was beginning to take form in a way she had not anticipated. They layered paint. Floods of blue cascaded against the warmth of Sarah's coral hues, entwining like conversations slowly unfolding. "What do these colors mean to you?" Maggie asked David as he worked, her heart swelling with anticipation. "They remind me of mornings together, like when we'd sit on the porch and watch the sunrise." He reflected with a sweet smile. "It was my favorite time. I could feel the world waking up. Just like this moment right now, we're waking up to each other's stories." Tears pricked Maggie's eyes. She hadn't realized how desperately she craved these moments of connection, citrus-colored memories intertwining with muted tones of doubt. And then it hit her. The colors she had chosen were not just her own. They were blended with the underlying flavors of David's memories, too. The fabric of their lives sewn together by laughter and shared experiences. As they painted, Sarah ventured, "Maggie, can I ask you something? Why did you choose flowers?" Maggie felt the weight of the question settle in the air. She paused, contemplating how to convey this vulnerable truth that was swimming just below the surface. "They've always reminded me of how delicate life can be," she began carefully. "Dismantling and rebuilding is part of what makes life beautiful, even in times of hurt. But like flowers, we can bend, we can sway, and sometimes we can crack through concrete to blossom." The studio fell silent as her words hung in the space between them, laden with insight. It was a bonding moment, a settling of tensions that had lingered for too long. Sarah looked contemplative, her expression eerily mirroring Maggie's own revelations about life and connection. "I think about that too," Sarah said, glancing at the blending colors on the canvas before them. "This is our chance to bloom together." They resumed painting in a newfound rhythm, the act of creation closely mirroring their emotional journey. There was a fluidity to their strokes now. They no longer felt like three isolated artists creating separately. Instead, they moved together and through each other, finding harmony where conflict had once reigned. Hours passed, and with each added layer, Maggie felt herself transforming, evolving not only as a mother-in-law, but as a mother, fiercely protective of her family's journey. By the end of the evening, they stood back to admire a collaborative masterpiece, a stunning array of colors layering upon one another, revealing their unique growth while embracing the connections that had tethered them throughout the night. In that moment, Maggie felt an abundance of warmth and satisfaction wash over her. This gathering, this seemingly simple act of creation, had culminated in a rich tapestry of their intertwined lives. The inky blues of David's memories, the spirited coral of Sarah's journey, and the vivid yellows reflecting her own tenacious heart. As they marveled at their work, Maggie recognized it, the fruit of her vulnerability, showing her that she had conquered her fear of inadequacy, that she no longer felt like a relic of the past, but rather an integral part of an evolving family narrative. She had achieved emotional resolution and reconnection, each brushstroke an affirmation of the love that enveloped them. David wrapped an arm around Maggie's shoulder, and Sarah leaned in, all three soaking in the beauty of honest dialogue, collaboration, and profound love. In that sacred space, Maggie realized she was more than just a mother. She was a visionary, painting a bright future for herself and her family. "Let's do this again," Sarah suggested as the color-saturated canvas shimmered under the studio lights, her eyes gleaming with newfound enthusiasm. "Yes. Let's create our next masterpiece," Maggie replied, feeling a solid confidence surge through her. The path ahead was clear now, imbued with strength, respect, and love. Their art would take new form, just like their relationship. They had faced fears, shared stories, and layered their vulnerabilities into art. This wasn't just a chapter closed, but rather a fresh beginning. One where boundaries dissolved, connections flourished, and family thrived. Together. As she reflected on this experience, Maggie felt a wave of accomplishment wash over her. a sense of genuine fulfillment embraced by her journey of growth. She had not only reclaimed her identity as an artist, but also established firm roots as a valued mother, mother-in-law, and artist within the expansive canvas of family. Now, as you embrace this story of growth and transformation, I urge you to join us. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment below your reactions and theories about this conclusion. Share your thoughts. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to spread the message of overcoming challenges. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the necessity of taking action.